Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week, we're going to continue our Taika Waititi Fest with his Marvel flick, Thor Ragnarok.
Let's dive in! Alright everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see /here, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what, Adam?
Where people find good media, Sherlock.
Every time, I'm going to keep you on your toes.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. If you guys like what you see /here, we have all sorts of segments. We're doing scene reviews now. We have full festivals. We do 101s. We do all sorts of good stuff. Forgotten Gems. It's been a little while since we've done one of those. But please, we'd appreciate any support you can give us. We're trying to grow this channel and all over the place. So let's get into Thor Ragnarok.
This is a first of a massive franchise. We've never done this before.
That's true. We've talked about Marvel a lot, but I don't think we've ever actually reviewed a Marvel movie. But having this be kind of Taika Waititi's first, pretty much big budget thing he's ever done, probably, right?
I would say
he's
so.
He's done a bunch of indie stuff on top of that, and that's your first big budget job is a Marvel movie. And this movie, I don't think if you ask people their favorite Marvel movie, I don't feel like the first two Thors would be on it. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with those two movies, but they're just probably not some that people think about when they think about their favorite Marvel movies. And this one has got to be in my top three.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning at least just a little bit of backstory that I think that historically the character of Thor, even within the comic book universe, was always a really boring character. He was always really dry, and he didn't really have a sense of humor, and he was very he was a god, right? And so and I think even in the very first Thor,
you mean from the comic books?
From the original comic books. I think even in the first Thor film, Chris Hemsworth does his best to make him an interesting character.
Totally.
But really, it's the bouncing off of other characters that makes you like anything that has to do with Thor. So really, his first movie was okay, it's fine. I guess
he did the best he could with it, and here he truly shines. I think he's truly one of the funniest parts of the movie. Yes. And he's always had that sense of humor, but I think after something like Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe they kind of saw how much humor worked in the world and were kind of understood it a little more. Obviously Tony Stark started with that, but that's all Robert Downey Jr., right? It's not necessarily Marvel and the Marvel movies. And they went on to do more funny stuff with Paul Rudd and Ant-Man and that kind of stuff. But, this one's really interesting because it's very loose compared to all the other Marvel movies.
Completely.
Right off the bat, it's a lot funnier. From the first scene, he's hanging there, and he's like, "You son of a bitch, you're still alive," and just all this stuff, and he's hanging there, and the bad guy, I forgot his name, the big guy who's is going to take down Asgard.
Yes.
I have his name written down. I forgot. I'm sure somebody will call me out though. So in that first scene where he's hanging there chained up and he's just spinning, and it's this has got Waititi all over.
Yeah, where he's
right? He's
wait,
sitting there
wait,
spinning. Waititi, I've noticed, just loves playing with tropes. Especially with something even just Chris Hemsworth playing how he plays Thor here makes you think different with that trope of what Thor should be, right?
Exactly.
And so you have this trope of the bad guy explaining, how he's gonna do everything before he takes him down, and just little funny jokes like the spinning around is oh, that's your crowd. I thought it was your eyebrow. A lot of it seems ad-libbed, right?
It does.
It just seems kind of playful.
And that opening fight scene is becomes very stereotypical of what we expect from a lot of Marvel movies, this very first fight scene that he has. And so they just they just
with Led Zeppelin and all that.
Yeah, and he just cuts to the chase. He's just like, and then he killed him, and then all right, now let's move on. This is less important than you might think it is, right? Like this is not. We need to get on to the rest of the story. And I think the whole voiceover bit that we get even before we meet that first big bad is all very subversive. I mean, everything in this movie is subverting the tone and sort of the rules of the Marvel movie. And you can tell that Waititi is really interested in getting the hell away from Asgard as quickly as possible, right? Like that landscape, that very regal, all gold and gilded landscape bores him. Like he wants neon colors and he wants crazy shit going on. So, it's like we try to leave from that place as quick as possible. Now there is a fantastic small role here that could have been a nothing role. It could have been, you could have just not had it, and
there's a lot of
the rest of the
like
movie would have been okay. But Keith Urban here, my God, is
so underrated,
so great. Behold my stuff. Right,
and
he's got the Vespa, and he's got the shake weight that he's doing, and
so good.
And you just go, if you were like a kind of schlubby middle management guy in Asgard that had access to the Bifrost Bridge, why would you not be like, I've collected all this stuff? Right.
First off, Keith Urban is a country star. Carl Urban is who you're talking about.
Oh God. I wrote it down wrong. I was so excited to see him.
You're out in the middle of the country. I get it. Honestly, we do have just a really solid cast here. Obviously Chris Hemsworth, but we got Mark Ruffalo, one of my favorites, Tessa Thompson, who I absolutely love in everything.
I agree. She's amazing.
I could say the same thing about Kate Blanchett. Very few things has she been in that I don't like, and of course
she's
Tom
so
Hiddleston, Taika Waititi himself, Idris Elba, and of course the one and only Jeff Goldblum. And we will get to that part of the movie in Jeff Goldblum land of Sakaar.
Yes.
And I can't wait to talk about him and what he brings to this. But
can we talk for just a really quick second about Matt Damon and Sam Neill?
Oh man. Well, let's set this up. So Thor goes back to Asgard, and Sam Neill is playing Odin.
Yes.
And Matt Damon is playing Loki, and it's like not even barely mentioned, right? It's just like if you didn't know it was those guys.
I don't think.
Like
I think
it's
this
the best
is the
cameo.
third time I've seen this movie. I don't think I noticed it was either one of them. Because I was paying it. I don't know why. I just wasn't paying attention. Because why would they be those bit characters that are in the movie for like 5 seconds?
And I think the guy playing Thor is one of Chris Hemsworth's brothers. So you have all three of those guys there. So, anyways, awesome cameos. He gets there, and Loki, of course, is kind of framed as the hero inside of this play. He also has a statue out in front now,
and he's disguised himself. He's disguised himself as Odin. Yes, yeah. And that's a great little like beginning twist right off the bat that is actually pretty damn funny.
It's great.
And I remember again from the comics that character of Loki, being a big comic book nerd, and always thinking like, well, what actor could you possibly get to play him? And Tom Hiddleston is just the best possible Loki.
He's excellent. And this is actually a really important movie for his character, because he's an always changing character, right? But this is the movie where one, we kind of get to see them be brothers the most, I think, and then also, they see their home burn, right? And Loki, I think it's supposed to kind of change him. Now, of course, the next scene after the end of Thor Ragnarok is the beginning of, I believe, Infinity War.
Yes.
Where, I guess spoilers, but where Loki gets killed.
Yeah.
And so it's it's kind of fun, and obviously they have a Loki TV show now, so there's
an infinite amount of timelines, right?
No one truly dies when there's that many timelines and that valuable of a character, at least from a money perspective.
Well, and you talk about this idea of growth, and I'm hopping around a little bit, but that's really what this movie is about, and it's actually in a lot of interesting ways tonally. reminds me thematically quite a bit of the movie we're going to do next week, What We Do in the Shadows, in terms of like what it means to grow as a person, even if you're sort of stuck as one particular type of character, right? Like Thor is always going to be the heroic superhero, but over the course of his character arc throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've seen him go from being this lonely god character who doesn't need anybody else to, by the time that we're here in Ragnarok, like, he understands the importance of having friends, and he understands that he needs to, like, he really needs to have a group of people that he cares about to be able to depend on, right? And that's sort of the theme of this movie. And so that tension between him and Loki, and him saying, like, look, you have the opportunity to be whatever you want. Just because you are this like god of mischief or whatever doesn't mean you can't choose to be something else. You can choose to be whatever you want, because we've seen him grow into that character over all this time, which is actually like a kind of thrilling little character study with this character who, like, really, like I said, most of the time is pretty stuffy.
Yeah, I agree. This is there. You know, honestly, if you think about in the pantheon of movie brothers, Thor and Loki got to be kind of up there now, right? Like,
well, I mean, it's definitely the two. You know, it's the two sides of this coin of you know, that they're still brothers, but he's always trying. You know, Loki's always trying to kill him, right? And he's just like, oh man, you did it again, trying to kill me again. You know.
And this is jumping around a bit too, but like I said earlier, you know, like, he's always changing, and he'll get, you know, we go to Jeff Goldblum land, and I'm just going to keep calling that. I know it's Sakaar, but
it's fine. But it is Jeff Goldblum land.
It immediately, you know, he's already in the room with the king, you know, with the Grand Master.
Yes.
And he's comfortable having drinks, you know, and he's like, hey, and Thor's there all chained up. But before we get to Sakaar and all the stuff that happens on that, let's talk a little bit about Hela and Cate Blanchett's character, the first Marvel female villain, which is cool, and what a no better person to do that. But you know, she comes back. Odin, you know, they go and meet Doctor Strange, and I always love this scene where he comes back and he's like, "I've been falling for 30 minutes."
That's so good. It's so funny. Yeah, that's again like just a really. It's fun to see these guys get to do some of these like comedic chops.
No,
because all of that stuff, the endlessly refillable beer, all of that is real. You know, the fact that his hammer turns into an umbrella, like, all of that's just great. It's very, very funny.
Yeah, it's so good. But they take him to see Odin, and he kind of says, you know, the real threat is coming, and Hela, who is the goddess of death, his firstborn, their sister. You know, she wants to be the queen of Asgard and take back her home. You know, she breaks Thor's hammer. I think they say like glass. Yep. You know, in the movie. So, you know, and that's kind of a weakness for him. Like, he sees that as a weakness. Like, he's so reliant on that hammer to kind of wield his power as the god of thunder.
Palter, let's just call a spade, okay? He's like one of the most powerful men on the planet. His giant rock hard hammer is shattered by the hand of a woman. Like, this is a little on the nose, but I think that's okay because it's a kids movie. But yes, he has performance anxiety for the rest of this movie, and sometimes it comes on in moments where he doesn't want it to, and you know, and his eyes glow.
You wake up with it. Yeah, you wake up with it.
You wake up with it. Exactly. It's very.
And then he comes to realize. Then he comes to realize he never needed it at all.
Yeah, it's like the. What is that? Is that the Cowardly Lion? I can't remember what that parable is, but yes, he never needed the hammer. Or no, it's the Schwartz. The Schwartz was in you the whole time. It was never about the ring. Yeah, that was it. But yes, well, so yes. But again, like let's while we can, let's just stop for another 2 seconds on. I never ever thought I would live long enough to see like a superhero that was a goth Cate Blanchett, and as someone who has had a mega crush for decades,
super villain,
super villain, as someone who's had a crush on her for decades, I'm like, that's just incredible. It's absolutely amazing. Very, very cool villain for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think this has got to be in my top 3 of my favorite Marvel movies. It's just one that immediately tickles my funny bone. And the other ones do have their charm and their fun and that kind of stuff, but this was just kind of a different experience. It didn't seem like, I mean, obviously the stakes were high, I guess, to a degree from a personal story, like their home being destroyed or being threatened to be destroyed by multiple villains here. But in the universe of Marvel, it didn't seem like the stakes were like super high inside of this one, right? And so it kind of made it an easier, fun watch and just a little more lighthearted, a little more playful. And like I think Marvel, when you do something like a whole universe like this, you gotta have movies like this to kind of balance out the seriousness in the world sometimes, and this like kind of reminds you why you love these characters, I guess, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Well, and I think that even the entire idea of this concept of Ragnarok as inevitable destruction, right? Like that you can't,
which means fate of the gods, right? Fate of the gods.
Well, and I mean, and it really is. It's this idea of like you cannot outrun this, and it's almost as if once his character realizes that that's the inevitability, he completely changes his philosophy, he changes his strategy to something different. And again, like that's, to me, it's very interesting because it's sort of telling a story about how change is inevitable, and you can try and push against it and watch everything fall apart, or you can be like, okay, what can we do with this? And the fact that that happens in this bizarre bubblegum world that Waititi has built that looks so unique. So good. I mean, even taking into account something as wacky as James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, this is even more bizarre. This has even funnier, weirder characters. A talking pile of rocks. I love the Grandmaster's sidekick. Who's
what's her name?
What's that?
She's in Hunt for the Wild. Yeah, she's amazing.
All of those elements are just fantastic. There's another thing that's happening here, though, that I thought was really interesting. And I didn't look to see who the cinematographer was here. But when we go to these flashbacks, there's one that's about Cate Blanchett's character when she was like Odin's assassin.
When she breaks the ceiling and we see kind of the real history of Asgard.
Yeah, so there's that scene, there's the history of the Valkyries later, and then there's a handful of moments in the very end fight scenes that look like these gorgeous Renaissance paintings almost. Everything's in slow motion, and they're these profiles, these long, almost tapestry-looking profiles where everything's in slow motion of these fight scenes, and it's kind of unlike anything I'd ever seen in an action movie before, where rather than doing this, and this does have some of that breakneck speed fighting, but there's these other moments where I'm like, this is more just like, it's almost like Waititi saying, okay, we know that there's going to be a big bombastic fight scene, so instead I'm going to slow everything really down, like slow it way down and make you feel something in this moment and show you something beautiful. And it's so much more interesting than just the whiz bang,
I totally agree.
Like, what the hell's going on, as you see in most action hero movies, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. The Valkyrie scene to me is the one that sticks out the most, where she comes back and is getting kind of a flashback of fighting Hela, right?
Yeah.
And that's her past, and she's no longer Believer, but she knows who Hela is. But that I agree, like it's a beautiful thing, and it's funny, like even looking at some of the paintings and what we do in the shadows.
Yes,
you can kind of see some of these elements. So he's probably into his art history and knows that stuff to a degree, right?
That's kind of that's exactly the impression that I got, for sure. And you can also see it in when he kind of has to go back and keep telling the Hela story after we've gone to the Jeff Goldblum world. It almost, not that I think he's phoning it in, but it's so drab and boring compared to like where Waititi wanted to take us, that I feel like, oh, he's lacing his boots for Marvel. Sure. He's putting in his hours, but what he really wants to do is get back to the wild, wacky world where everything's bubblegum colored, right?
That's a great point. I never really thought about it, but yeah, you probably do have to compromise a little bit. But at the same time, I saw a quote from him saying that he hid 80% of the script from the cast.
Really?
And didn't want to tell them so they could ad lib and just kind of surprise them as the movie went on of what was going to happen next. So I guess when you're something as big as Marvel and you're someone like him, maybe you get a little more leeway with this kind of stuff. But I agree, the parts where he shines is Sakaar and this bubblegum world. I do think it's in the same world of Guardians of the Galaxy, but maybe a little more vibrant, a little more unique. It's another planet, so you can play with that stuff.
Well,
but I
and
can see it
technically
being in that same world.
Here we go. And technically, according to Marvel lore, Jeff Goldblum's character is part of the same alien race as Benicio del Toro's character from Guardians of the Galaxy. The Collector is I believe related to the Grandmaster. So
can I just live in? I just want to live in a world where Jeff Goldblum controls everything.
The fact that at the end of this movie there is this amazing spaceship chase scene where they're inside Jeff Goldblum's ship that he uses for orgies, and that he's trying to find any kind of weapons, and he hits the big button that creates a giant hologram of a dancing Jeff Goldblum saying, "It's my birthday. It's my birthday." And there's no weapons on the ship. It's just fireworks going off in the sky that confuse the other ships. I was like, that's just so delightful. That's so damn delightful to me. That's like, I don't know. It's so silly and yet still works even in like a real action-packed sequence, right?
And he doesn't have to act. He just has to be Jeff Goldblum, right?
What does he say? He says, "I hate that word." And he's like, he's like, "What, slaves?" And he's like, "Ooh, yeah, let's don't use that." And he's like, "Okay, prisoners with jobs." And he's just like, "Okay, sure, why not?"
Well, and just little things like just calling Thor the Lord of Thunder instead of the God of Thunder. He's like, he just keeps trying to correct him.
Be careful with his hands. He shoots little sparkles out of his fingers.
Ooh, sparkles. Yeah.
Ooh, that's scary.
And then we have to talk to, this does kind of turn into a buddy comedy a little bit too once we get Hulk introduced in our life, and we get this whole thing with the contest of champions that the Grandmaster has done there, and Thor gets a haircut by Stan Lee, which is always the Stan Lee cameos are always amazing.
Well, and apparently a child that had visited the set came up with that line.
This is great. Great nugget. I read this today.
That some kid who had visited the set and they had explained everything with that sequence said he should say that the Hulk is a friend from work, and they were like, "That's a great idea." And so they added the line in, and it
was like in the trailer.
Yeah, and
it's the funniest. How awesome is that?
It's the funniest line. It's so damn funny.
I know him from work.
Yeah. Well, and then just the whole we're both like fire, right? But that's another super Waititi line, we're both like, you're not, no, it's not fire and ice. We're both like fire, but Hulk hotter
for
fire,
sure.
Right?
I love his little role in this movie too, putting himself in the movie and in this role of Korg. Yeah. He's just like this nice guy who's a rock.
For some reason,
I tried to start a revolution, but it didn't really work out.
Well, and the fact that even on an alien planet, a giant pile of rocks is going to call everybody bro, right? Where he's like, what did you want to talk about, bro? Right? And you're just like, what is that? Like, absolutely brilliant, very, very funny.
The first time I saw that, I was convinced that was Rhys Darby, but it is Waititi, so kind of interesting. But I don't know. This is just this is great, and I love the whole side of Hulk here, where we find out later that Banner doesn't even know he's been Hulk for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a pretty pivotal emotional part for him, and he's never even been on another planet before in this whole Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. So he wakes up here in this planet as this. As this monster, and he's treated like a king. Everyone loves him. He's the king. He's the beast. He wins the contest of champions. Yeah. So he has a bunch of fame here, but it's all fake to a degree, and him and Tessa Thompson, Valkyrie, are like pals and stuff through the movie.
And once he turns back into Mark Ruffalo, who, God, Mark Ruffalo gets to be the closest to his character from Safe Men I've ever seen in this Waititi film, where he's just, everything is just good comedy. He doesn't have to do this like heavy burdened Bruce Banner character.
Sure.
He gets to do the whole like, Tony wears his pants really tight, right? He's like always pulling down the crotch of the pants and all that stuff. Like, just really,
again,
really funny.
like, that's the kind of stuff you can do when the stakes probably aren't as high, right? You can turn this into a buddy comedy, and it's kind of fun. Also, first time Hulk has ever been voiced by anyone, at least in the Marvel universe, anyone other than Lou Ferrigno. Ruffalo did the Hulk voice, but Lou Ferrigno, the first time, he did not do it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Kind of.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Kind of interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I really loved. Obviously, there's the super classic like, "Is he though?" meme of, where he's like, look, I like you more, but like, the Hulk, like, we could kind of use him, right? Like. And he's getting all embittered about it. The Hulk doesn't have 7 PhDs, and just like, it's just very, very funny stuff. And then this great moment of
the Revengers.
Yeah, the Revengers. Well, there's this really great scene of seeing Bruce Banner like walking out into this entire street fair celebration of people worshiping the Hulk, and him just being, down to the point where he gets kind of covered in this green dust. So that later this green dust is sort of, it's just very surreal, where it's like, oh yeah, this is sort of your alter ego has taken over this stupid planet that you got stuck on. Like, it's just really, really interesting. There's some really interesting layers that I think that Waititi got to play with here,
No doubt. Like, I mean, as maybe it's not heavy brooding drama like he could do if he wanted to, but he's definitely going through some emotional distress of like, I'm a little freaked out right now, right? Like,
totally.
I don't know.
And he's like, well, I just need you to be calm. Can't freak out.
And of course, you can always count on Loki to betray you. Again, always pulling a fast one.
Yes.
They come back to Asgard together, and the Bifrost is pretty much their only escape, and she kind of has raised her army as well, right? From the underground.
Yeah. And again, all of this is again feels like the stuff that's just like kind of needs to be boring. There to push it along. And it was fine. It was fine. But because it's not that it was lacking, it's that everything else, this surrealist hilarity was at such a heightened, fevered pitch that when it got back to, I'm going to raise my army of the dead, I was like, who gives a shit? Even though it's Cate Blanchett and I totally want to see her do stuff, I'm also like, give me more Jeff Goldblum. Like, get out of here, Marvel movie. I want to watch this Taika Waititi film.
So yeah, you and Waititi and a lot of us, honestly, because that is the best part of the movie, as you're pointing out here, is we just want to stay on Sakaar the whole time.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I get it to move the story along and everything, and they do go back and they have that revolution on the bridge and all that stuff, and Asgard does go down. And he again, we never find out he needed his camera. He officially becomes the god of lightning.
Yes.
And sparkles and all that stuff. So like, there's some important things that happen here too.
It's actually a great set piece for the climax of the film, though. I think using, the fact that we've set up that bridge,
the Rainbow Bridge,
many of the films, and that like it is this bridge that can be shattered. The giant wolf is such a fantastic image. The giant ship that comes to save them. There's a lot of like emotional pushes and pulls that happen, and a lot of great, like, again, our country music singer Keith Urban gets he even gets a little comeuppance. He gets his own tiny character arc to decide to be a good guy. Like, I was like, that's fun. Like, we get it. We get him just like change his mind. Like, we didn't need that, but it was a nice little moment.
Yeah, for sure. And like, that's something like, well, you could have, you could have always been against her, but maybe you're just playing your cards, I guess, to a degree.
Yeah,
and
he's a coward. I was just going to say another one of my favorite moments from that same little sequence there is, there's this fun little bit with Tessa Thompson of like, why do you look so familiar to me with Banner? And then he's like, I'll show you who I am. And jumps out of the ship and then just like basically for all intent and purpose dies in front of the wolf, right? Just like lands and the wolf kind of like nudges him a little bit and that's the end of it, And I'm just like, from her perspective, she has to be like, wait, that's who you are? Like, what the hell did that all mean? It's just a very, very funny line before he becomes obviously the Hulk and does everything else. But it's a very, very funny moment to me.
Again, Waititi's all over this movie. I love that he's in the Marvel Universe. I believe he's going to be in the Star Wars universe as well soon, which I think he was in Mandalorian as one of the robots in the first season.
Oh, that's right. Right. He's the IG-88 that gets reprogrammed to take care of the child. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, awesome Waititi movie, awesome Marvel movie. Again, one of my top 3, I think,
Agreed,
for sure.
Same here.
But a great time and a cool, different, something that's different than all the other ones that we're reviewing in this fest, where he did get handed the keys to something bigger with a bigger budget, and like it was really fun to see what he
got
could
Dad's
do with
Ferrari,
that. So, yeah.
Right? He got the keys to Dad's
for
Ferrari.
a little while.
Like, he got a lot of money to make that movie, and he did. He didn't phone it in.
Good for him.
He made it his. I think the fact that we see the Child Protective Services woman show up as his
No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, No Child Left Behind. The fact that we see her as the second in command, that's again like so much fun, because I didn't recognize her, obviously the first time I saw this movie, and so to be able to see
also
that.
Sam Neill is also in this movie, so
and Sam Neill again, and so it's like that to me is just like, it's really fun to see like, oh, okay, like this is, you have your cadre of actors, you're going to go into even something as big as this massive franchise, and you're going to do your thing with it, which really the only other person I can think of that's done that in that to that same degree has been James Gunn. Right, where James Gunn did the same thing, where he brought in his friends to be, guys like Michael Rooker that have been in tons of James Gunn's films, and like has that tone, has that feel to it. And I feel like nowadays I'm like, shit, do that with everybody. Give everybody, like,
yeah.
Give Tarantino one.
Even back to Tarantino or Joe Dante or someone who they just always use.
Dude, Joe Dante should totally do a Marvel movie.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I
would
be
love
so
that. I would
perfect.
love that.
Yeah, I would totally love that.
Awesome. Well, great fest so far. We're going to continue next week with What We Do in the Shadows, and then after that, we're going to do Jojo Rabbit. So super excited to continue this festival. Please play along, like, and subscribe if you like what you see /hear, and we will see you next week.
Bye, you guys.